These
This little crease is bothering the crap out of me. I'll get over it. Don't worry. Okay.
Now I can't see it.
I know, right? It's like I have two necks of a V-neck. It's like a W neck instead of a V-neck.
Yeah, it looks something special.
I got to go change my shirt. This is an Italian podcast. I need to be fashionable.
Well, up to you, man.
Dude.
If you want to do it, you can also do it topless.
We're good.
Okay, wicked.
Cool.
Okay, Arcade Studio Podcast. I'm here with Daniel Reskin from Denver, Colorado, but originally from Miami, which is where we met quite a few years ago at your sister's record store.
Sweat Records. Gotta plug it.
Is it it's still standing, yeah?
It still is, despite all odds, like the market itself and the community, like their landlords are crappy, but the community's kept them going, and being any small business right now is getting rocked, but they're holding on. So,
fantastic.
Yeah, they got a good online store. Check them out.
Okay, wicked. Yeah, because I was doing a research project for Rolling Stone Italia, and they asked me to do something about what's special about Miami when I was over there for another job, and I found Sweat, and that was pretty special. It was really interesting.
It's one of the special things.
But Daniel, you're a comedian, or more like you're a retired comedian, or
I'm still figuring that out. What to call myself? Because I think I'm still a comedian, but I'm not sure I can call myself a stand-up comedian. The longer I have been off stage, there's still
make that the separation for us, because my brother and I, we follow quite a bit of comedy, but the Italian audience isn't as caught up to stand up. Like they understand what how do they call it here?
They call it cabaret because
it's more vaudevillian here.
Sure, I got to do stand up in Paris a few years ago, and it was definitely way more of a mixed bag, which is cool. But yeah, just as far as, because the stand up culture in America is intense and very well developed and wonderful. But I guess the reason I make that distinction is because stand-up comedy comes with such an element of pride. When you do stand-up comedy, you're kind of in a class of your own. I mean, improv is great, sketch, film, and everything else. All comedy is wonderful. But stand-ups kind of hold themselves in this elite class. It's a solo activity where you're all in, all the risk, all the reward. It's all yours. You can get the massive failure, or you can get launched to success, and it's all because of you. It's not a team of people doing a group thing. And with that pride in stand-up comes the fact that a lot of people say, if you're not getting on stage, you're not a comedian anymore. You're only as good as your last set, that kind of stuff. I stopped my show. I had a monthly show last year. So notwithstanding pandemic, it's been not that long for me, and I haven't officially quit comedy, but I have stopped beating myself up about not going out when I've been forcing myself, and kind of plateauing in a way where even if I'm still getting laughs, I wasn't enjoying it as much, and just finding ways to make excuses to not go out, and also just enjoying other aspects of life and questioning, what do I want out of the big picture of things, and what is the comedy equation entail?
Sorry, just 1 second. My wife's.
Oh yeah, no, sorry.
I'm here. I can go on. You can go on, Mike, with me.
Don't worry. Pause or stop or whatever, but yeah, just suffice to say, the comedy can be an all-demanding being that it will take every scrap of time and energy that you give to it, and it may never recognize you. It will take everything you can give, and some people don't find a strategy to give that keeps them healthy and happy in a long-term way.
But it's a highly competitive field as well, right? I mean, like, as you said, it's all on you. But in the meantime, you're in like this whole kind of, it's like a school of fish. Like, when you see a school of fish that like go around and looks like, it's all nice and beautiful and everything. But like, to make it out of that, from an outside perspective, and what I've heard through interviews, like with famous comedians and stuff, it just seems like extremely competitive. And then like when you create like your little groups of friends and stuff, obviously like little crews, but even inside those crews, it's highly competitive and like you like rag on each other. Like, how much has this become even more difficult now with so many people doing it?
100%. I mean, it's like it does have a lot in common with any art form in that respect. You know, if you're a visual artist or writer or dancer, etc., there's more people now than ever doing that kind of stuff. And we're in a creative boom. And, you know, when there's a certain level of stability, then the children can worry more about art than, you know, going and putting food on the table, that kind of stuff. That's not a bad thing. That's great for the world. There's more good stuff in the world, and there's way more bad stuff to sort through. Stand-up itself, it does have that strange element where it's not like you're in a band or an improv group where because you are rooting for each other's success very much. The people around you, it's like classes in high school or something. There's kind of the people that joined comedy when you joined, and it doesn't matter what their age is. They can be 18 or they can be 80. And, but you all kind of have this comedy age that's in common. And it's a beautiful thing to share. But at the end of the day, there's only so many spots. And once you do a comedy contest or something, there's this, hey, look around you. You have to kill each other now. Like, no problem. I was just explaining how comedy stand-up could be a brotherhood and also a death battle.
Right, of course. It's like it's the same with photographers. We sort of all love each other. So I've got a 2-year-old, and she's
but there's only so much room on the wall, right?
Exactly, and that's the thing. We all love each other. We all look at each other's work, but we all want the same client. So at the end of the day,
right? There's balancing that. Yeah. Oh, wow, that's so good. I love that. But also in the back of your head, but my stuff would be slightly better, maybe even greater.
Why did you do it that way? I would have done it so much better than you, like any time. But that's always
the beauty of art.
All the
that's probably how many, like a lot of people started off. There's that one friend who didn't get up on stage and was like, I would have done it this way. It's like, just fucking do it, man. Like, you do it then. And it's like, okay, I will.
Right.
You up and,
the last interview I talked to, we were saying there's the people that watch someone worse than them and go, I can do that.
Yeah.
And then there's the people that watch someone much better than them and go, wow, could I do that?
Yeah,
you know, just kind of a matter of perspective.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's how much you want to challenge yourself. No?
Which of the two are you?
I can see both. It's the looking at the untalented person that can get me started, and then looking at the very talented person to give you somewhere to aspire.
Right.
Yeah, that's a good answer.
and we hit so many dualities, and it's always like a little column A, a little column B. So often.
But you need both of them. You need like the target to aim for, and you need your peers that will pushing you ahead, so that you can sort of beat sometimes, and sometimes they beat you, and it's just like that. That's great, you know.
It is, yeah. I mean, there's always another show, there's always another set, but yeah.
How was your first set? Do you remember it?
Yeah, I do. It was it was a contest in college for a clothing company where they had the comedy campus challenge, and randomly they had a couple shows, and I had a friend at the time who we were like the funny guys in our group, and he was like, "We have to do this. You have to do this." And I was like, no, I've never been the type of person. I've always been funny, but never front of the room funny. Never, hey, everybody, look at me funny.
Yeah.
I'm in the back making fun of that person, you know. But we worked on it. We did stuff. And yeah, my first set was before Movies on the Lawn night, which was outside, already terrible. In the dark, double terrible. No stage, triple terrible. Those are the three elements for a basic stand-up comedy show, by the way. Yeah. A little elevation, lights, and we had the sound, actually. That's the last crucial one. I did have a microphone. Outside was just a bonus. But I was talking to a group of people who had no idea comedy was happening, among maybe 5 or 6 other people, and I was making some joke like, "This new senator, you heard about this guy Obama? His name sounds like a game on The Price is Right. You ready to play Obama?" Like it's like way before he was elected and everything. But yeah, I managed to scrape out a win somehow for whatever that was worth. I think I just had friends who clapped for me.
That's what you need.
But yeah, it was one of those moments at the end of college where I was like, "Oh, this fits. I should really, if I don't pursue this, I'll regret it for the rest of my life." Fast forward, here we are.
Here we are. You're now, you moved to Denver because there was a bigger comedy scene there, or for the drugs?
Yes.
Colorado. Exactly. Column A, column B.
Yeah, there you go. Comedy was the main reason, but yeah, the not being a criminal for something that I enjoy that is not very harmful is icing on the steak. So
exactly. And like I always imagined, like for me, Denver seems more like a sort of like a sticks town, but obviously it isn't. It's like
not anymore.
It's quite large, no?
Yeah, and it's actually in the past. I've been here about 5 years now, and it has gone through a boom. I got here right at the beginning of it, and the people who've lived here forever are starting to go like, "Stop moving here, people! You're turning us into LA." Da, da, da.
Yeah.
But that's their victim of their success. The city's great, and I love Miami, and it was a wonderful place to be from. Mm-hmm. But now that I can see the perspective of 2 cities, it's like Denver is a city that cares about itself in a way that Miami just doesn't. Miami's worried about getting people there and tourism, and not like building the roots of real sustainable communities and stuff like that. That's not high on the list. There's people fighting for it,
right?
But
well, your skin tone is better for Denver as well, I think.
Sure. Well, we're a mile high, so if I go out, I got to lotion up.
Yeah, I can imagine.
But the quarantine has been good for pale people. So.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's true. The shade has gone like down a couple of grades in general, and all the Instagram TV like lies and stuff. It's like
right. Seeing all the TV personalities just like in their homes with bad lighting, no makeup.
Yeah, that's been mad.
Not so easy now, is it?
Mm-hmm. You have like a tanning salon inside your, like a tanning bed inside your.
So still room. In Miami, that's the thing I would have been driven to.
Oh, yeah. because you have to be tan, right? You can't not be.
It's a lot more of a thing for sure. Yeah. And I would have just, my friend who cuts my hair would just, and in no mean way, be cutting my hair and be like, "You look so much better with the tan." And then just go on like she means the best, like, and she's probably right,
Yeah, she wants to help you get laid.
Yeah. She did. She changed my nerdy glasses back then. I owe Christy a lot.
You see, there needs to be a Christy in everybody's life. I had that in my life. And just somebody that comes and cleans you up a little and makes you understand that what the opposite sex is actually looking for.
Right. I'm not trying to be mean, but I mean, if you take it the wrong way,
you're going to get offended.
See it as mean, but it's not mean.
Yeah. So going into what made you step away from the microphone, at least temporarily, I've got a feeling it's similar to what's happening in my life, which is I go into set, I still take good photographs, but I've don't have that burning passion to do it anymore. It's like, it's not something that I wake up in the morning, or like if I don't do it for 3 days, I'm like, "Oh my God, I need to get into the set." And that's the thing that I think at the end of the road will sink a career as well, because if you keep doing it like that,
if you keep doing that without addressing it,
we're just like going through the motions. Yeah, so you need to sort of figure out somewhere to rekindle that spirit again. No,
that's almost exactly like stand-up. Only difference, I imagine, is you're getting paid for when you're going in.
Oh yeah, we get paid.
Photos, yeah. And most of the time we're not. The stand-up pay scale is stuck in the 90s or after the comedy boom. So it's, people say there's no middle class in comedy. Yeah. You're either not making anything, or all of a sudden you're in this, group that is suddenly making thousands. And just kind of going through the motions. Exactly. I mean, there's a certain element in stand-up where you are encouraged to grind. You have to get out there every night, if not every night, as much as you can, to really hone those skills, to learn those lessons that are intangible and unachievable if you were just standing in front of the mirror at home. You really do need a crowd. And a lot of other elements, and just doing lots of random situations. That's what's going to make you a better comedian and going to make, it seem great. And I love that. And grinding is wonderful. I've done it, and you have to do it. But there's a certain point where people are grinding just because they think they're supposed to, but yet you see them doing the same exact jokes, not working on small improvements, just kind of going through the motions, as you say. There's a huge theme at open mics with seasoned comedians where they're kind of like, ugh, I hate all my material, just doing these same jokes. I wish I could just write on new jokes. And comedians are writing jokes at the last minute and kind of treating it like homework rather than going home and crafting most of the bit and then bringing it to stage to work on some nuances. Some people have to write on stage, but there's a lot of people who think they do, and they're just kind of being lazy.
Right.
They go on stage with a bunch of half-cocked ideas and see what happens. And that's fun too. And that can develop you in a different way. But
yeah, you might be a little bit more able to do spontaneous crowd work or something like that. From
it's a muscle for sure.
It's a muscle, exactly.
But yeah, people work these muscles sometimes, and real working out, sometimes you don't realize you need a rest day. You need to go live and be a human and experience not being in a comedy room for
that's what I was about to say, is that the experience of life is often what gets people into comedy or any art form, the type of childhood you had, the places you've been, all that kind of stuff. That's all material for what you're going to be working on in your creative endeavor. And at one point, if you get stuck in the machine and you're not having new experiences, then you can't write new material or create new work because you're not having a new input. So then it's something like Dave Chapelle that was at the top of his game, and he went off for how many years, 10 years, and traveled. I mean, he was probably doing a little bit of something here and there, but he was mainly just traveling and seeing life and doing his stuff, and he came back stronger than ever. Or Louis. Yeah,
well, he shows one guy that's probably the one shining star out of everyone. Dave Chapelle seems to be the guy that can make anything funny just because he has some interesting thoughts, and the way he puts them out there. It's just funny, even if it's not a joke,
Yeah, he's kind of the example of someone who's cracked the code. And had he been away 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, it's up to him if he wanted to come back and be funny.
Of course.
He's the Carlin of our age, for sure.
He probably was
George Carlin figure.
Drying up. He probably wasn't drying up, but he might. When he came back, he had a lot of stories about Africa and that kind of stuff. So you just
that probably came from those 2 weeks in South Africa.
He was burnt out from the Hollywood system and the weight of the success that hit him. Was harder than most. So I think he came out fine. Yeah. But yeah.
But how do you from that, from going from, because it's such a wide, especially nowadays with so many mediums available to you and so many platforms and so many ways to go about your comedy. There's such a wide selection. And then, I think going from stand-up comedy, which is, it's good to maybe hone your skills and stuff, but then at a commercial level, if you want to be a professional comedian, you have to kind of understand, okay, my kind of comedy is going to be good for this platform. How did you're not quitting comedy, but you're just quitting that you're just putting that on hold for now, the stand-up. What helped you decide where to go? Because now you're doing a podcast and a YouTube channel.
Yeah. I think what I'm realizing now is, as much as I love stand-up and I appreciate all the skills and experiences I've gained from it, it can be limiting in a way. Stand-up, if you're into stand-up, you could devote every second to stand-up and not worry about other kinds of things. But at the end of the day, I am a creative person who loves to do all kinds of different stuff. I love to draw. I love to create. I want to make a video game. I want to make the YouTube videos. So I say that's something I'm trying to push right now. Check out, I'm going for 100 subscribers, everyone. Daniel Reskin, check it out.
Yeah, we'll push you.
Trying to make but essentially it's like a content graveyard right now, where I just like throughout my years, either old stand-up sets or like when I did public access television shows, that kind of stuff is all on there. And now I'm trying to make more like directed content that's expositional and thought essays, that kind of stuff, and self-help. I'm doing a video right now about how I've played these crappy cell phone games that are just like worthless, money grubbing. They're not even games, but they like are addictive as hell. Yeah. I played one for like 3 years, so I'm doing a video about like picking it apart and just kind of. So hopefully some other person.
Which one?
It was called Injustice 2. It's a fighting game with like Superman and Batman and stuff. And you know, it's kind of a fun game, but at the end of the day, all they want is your money, and it's just broken. And,
it's good to play.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, all those games
in a world of unlimited video games, people need to choose. There's incredible ways, but pieces of art that are video games, you know.
Yeah.
And people are playing Candy Crush and getting hooked in. Just it's horrible. But yeah, so it's cool to take off the stand-up hat, and now I can be like, no, I'm a creative. I am a stand-up, but to call myself just a stand-up is limiting. I want to do so many creative things. And now that I'm allowing myself to take a step back from comedy or put it on the back burner, it's not gone. I'm not throwing it out the window. It's cool. It's exciting. And it's a little for someone who has trouble making a choice, because I want to have things perfect in my head. And then I obsess over that so much I never actually do it. Now I'm just like, stop being precious, create.
Yeah, just pull things out there.
Yeah, put it out there, because you never know like who is going to watch one of your old sets, or like just some thing that you put out for like in 5 minutes, and that's probably going to be the thing people remember you for. Like
probably right, the stuff I don't spend weeks editing.
Yeah,
of course. It's always like that.
But hey, I'll take it. If that maybe the dumb thing brings in someone, and then they watch the old thing, and whatever. That's at the end of the day, I'm doing it because that's what I want to do, and I'm not like pushing people. I wasn't as a comedian saying, come see me, you got to see me, And like, I probably could have used a little more of that. But in the same way, I'm not like, sign up for my Patreon, like, subscribe,
Yeah.
It's a fine line
eventually. But yeah, no one wants to be that person, I guess.
But like, before you were saying like, you were not the in front of the classroom funny guy. You were the back of the room funny guy. But like talking to you, like having met you like 20 minutes ago, you seem to like just have a lot of like confidence, and like you're very articulate and stuff. See how articulate I am, like. But
eloquacious and shit.
Exactly. But did you do any like acting classes or something to help you prepare you for the stage, or just to be in front of the camera or something like that? Or do you just like YouTube tutorial yourself to success?
Really, I did stand up. I studied as much as I could, and then I started getting into acting through stand up, and eventually, roles came around. Started doing shorts, and eventually got an agent and started doing commercial work and stuff in Miami, which is something I got to do here in Denver. But luckily, so I know I could benefit from classes, and I still could and should take classes. But at the same point, the education that I got from doing stand-up for so long, just coupled with like things about myself that I had always hidden and just finally got to reveal. Just I was being a ham in my mirror as a little kid, like the full insanity, doing shows like alone in my room, and it was a very private and fun place. And then kind of being a comedian was learning to take that funny that I had naturally honed my whole life, and then learning to become that funny again, but just kind of randomly on stage in front of people. Like the moment you start stand up, you become way less funny than you are. And just getting back to zero is an amazing achievement. So yeah, it's given me a good skill set and helped bring out the extrovert to my introvert, I guess.
That's like and for us when we went
shit.
When we moved from South Africa to Italy, because we're Italian, but we were born in South Africa.
Cool.
Our English was obviously what it is now, maybe a little bit better.
Fantastic.
And but our Italian,
we can do full Afrikaans if you want. Don't worry, I know
we can try. like a salsa cracker. But our Italian wasn't. Like, it was archaic. It was the Italian that our parents spoke when they were living in Italy, and it wasn't as fluent as it should be. So when we moved here, translating our humor into another language was a nightmare, because your personality is completely different in a different language, and you don't realize that until you start working on that.
That's huge. Yeah.
It's very weird. And when I see people that can do comedy in different languages, like Tom Segura or
Eddie Izzard,
that's a different kind of mind, It's madness.
That's stand up on a different level. That'll get you to understand stand up you'll have to think about it in ways that you never would if you didn't have to worry about translating it, because not only is the grammar, but you have to worry about the culture and just the way thoughts are conveyed.
And
taking the camera.
The use of irony as well is this thing that doesn't exist in Italy. Like, but at the end of the day, I bet it's harder for you at first, but it seems more rewarding, like, especially how multilingual you are, to be able to actually get that reaction in multiple languages. It's got to make you feel so worldly.
Yeah, but it's a drug. It's a drug. Like, making someone laugh is like, already laughing. I've said this on the podcast before, but like, what is one of the things that I prefer in the world? Like, it's laughing and then making someone laugh. It has so much power to it. It's like the best feeling, and to actually be able to do that with someone who's like looking at you strange, like maybe in the first couple of years where you're in the country, and like, hey, I don't get you. Like, what are you talking about? And then actually manage to connect to someone, and not do it because you want to make, it's also that, like, when you're trying to be funny, a lot of the times you feel like it's so forced. And then when you just say that one thing, like, naturally, and someone laughs, you're like, okay, shit, maybe there's something to this. And then you just feel good about it. Like, when you see someone laughing at your shit, you're like, okay, didn't expect that.
Yeah. And it's a great moment no matter what. And then learning to do it all over again as an adult, in a new language. That's cool. That's a great accomplishment. And that's probably a benchmark almost. It's like of fluency. Can you joke in the language?
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah, and the comebacks. Like, for me, that was always a big thing, just being able to be witty rather than actually, like, it's like try and use wordplay and that kind of stuff. But
survival.
I remember coming up with my first Spanglish pun back in Miami. And, it was a big moment. But there was, only so many audiences I could use it on. But the few that I did, it was great.
Yeah, when it works, it works. And where do you go
Dulce
to?
De Lechazo.
No, I lost you.
By the way.
Oh, we lost you. We lost you just on
a caramel and semen joke. Oh, Dulce de Lechazo, just for the record, which is a dulce de leche and lechazo, which is semen. So, you're welcome, Daniel, 8 years ago in Miami. Collect on that royalty.
You should definitely make a website, already buy it. Dolce de Lechazo. You should really Pornhub will becoming knocking. Yeah. You never know.
It's probably been it's like the Bang Bus of Colombia or something.
Exactly.
You could probably buy the .com or the .us.
I'll get the .biz or something.
Yeah. You'll be fine.
.io, very hot.
Where do you go to for your creativity? Where does it come from? Like, your ideas?
You just got to catch them.
Yeah,
they come. Pop. Life makes them happen. Experiences make them happen, and that's how I knew I was fading out of comedy a little bit too. Is when I stopped catching them, because the whole thing is you bring around a notepad, you bring around, or just have a file on your phone where you got to catch these things because you will forget about them. And these sometimes they come fully formed, sometimes it's just a shred of the idea, but just being open to catch them. And I've definitely started catching them again, but there was a time where I was like, it's funny. Like, what am I going to do with it though? Whatever. Like, once you train your brain to kind of think in bits, you can't really turn that off. Right. It can get quieter or it can get less frequent, but it doesn't go away. And especially if you have people in your life and you're just talking and you're funny anyway, as long as you're not the person who's stopped doing comedy on stage, but now you're just trapping all your friends and loved ones into forced comedy situations where you're doing bits on them in person. And
like a hostage.
They're like, wait, are you doing a thing? Okay, I think get back to the open mic.
Yeah.
Like an experiment. Like, okay, you guys are my sample crowd. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, comics do that anyway, and it's okay in small bites, but yeah, the comedy brain does not stop.
Yeah.
Have you done or flirted with the idea of doing stand-up, or done anything similar?
I would love to do that. I would love to do that. I'm just like, that's where all the questions are coming from as well. Because like
you're scoping out you're writing your first 5 minutes in the bottom right now. Like,
I've got I think I've got about 30 minutes of material written down somewhere or something, but I just
that's way too much.
Problem. Yeah, it's way too much. But I'm I
that's good. I mean, pick
a
few bullet points of it. I mean, the same thing I tell anyone who's curious about stand-up is get a few of those bullet points. You're gonna know which ones. Get 3 to 5 of them, and then just do it. Go on stage. I mean, the hard part you've already done is coming up. You have a whole little experience bin to pick from, or material to kind of try out. A lot of people are like, I don't know where to start. I say, when you know that funny idea, it's going to hit you. Just catch it, write it down. And when you have 3 or 5 of those, that's your first open mic. And go, do a little research. Most open mics, people are super nice, especially if they know it's your first time. I don't know. I can't imagine it's too different over there in Italy. It might even be more. Well, I mean, you have the whole mixed arts thing.
We don't really have comedy.
Right.
Situation here.
It's all mixed, right? It's like some stand-up, some music, some.
Yeah. It's not even. It's starting now to actually let comedians into clubs and do their thing. Before there was a really famous comedy club which was called Zelig, and there was all sketch artists basically, and people that were doing like
characters and stuff. Yeah,
characters.
I guess you can't necessarily start the way you would want to here, the same way you start in America.
But now what we've noticed is that, last year, a controversial comedian, Louis C.K., came to visit our shores because he couldn't do shows anywhere else.
That's right. And Italy welcomed him with open arms.
Of course we did, because we're so starved for comedy. I mean, apart from the fact that he is funny.
It's funny how the market works.
Yeah, but we're so starved for it. So obviously,
would you like our slightly damaged comedian? We loved him very much a few years ago. But
it's amazing. But you would still buy. If someone gave you a broken Ferrari, you would still take the broken Ferrari.
Depends if that Ferrari is covered with the blood of the family it ran into to break it.
Yeah, it's fine. I'll take it. I'll sell it for
just wash it off.
It's is this cheap? Is this house cheap because it's cheap, or because there was a murder in it yesterday?
Yeah. If you don't believe in ghosts, it's okay.
Yeah. No, I'm not here. Louis in a strange place right now. I'm not apologizing for him. I can see the wave of forgiveness kind of starting in a lot of people, or at least the people that still like him are being a little more vocal about it. And I definitely can feel that, because I have a tendency to want to forgive people and give people second chances, and redemption is such a powerful, incredible force. And then in the first episode of my podcast, we mentioned it, and then my guest Jake Becker was like, well, I know he's sorry, but he called all those chicks liars for 5 years. And I was like, well, shit. Yeah, damn. I don't know if he did sufficiently apologize for that. And then, on the other side, people are like, but he's one of the best comedians in the world still. That didn't change, and I haven't watched his new special. And it's at the point I'm like, I'll watch it for free. Maybe I won't pay for it. I'll pirate it. And then for justice, I'll watch it just for science.
For information.
I don't know. Have you guys watched this new one?
Yeah, it was basically the one that he did here. He was working.
Oh, okay.
It was the one that got leaked. I don't know if you saw that one on YouTube.
I heard, that was the one that got a bunch of controversial people work on it. I heard a bunch of it. Yeah.
So he did that, and then by the time that he got to Italy, he'd polished it up quite a bit from the one that was leaked. And then now on the show, it's pretty much the same thing, but just much cleaner. It's a finished show. It's a finished hour.
Sure.
So by the time that it got there,
right, that was raw stuff. What are the feelings that you guys have on the or Italy in general, or is it less of an issue?
It's less of an issue. I mean, here there isn't obviously the massive comedy crowd, so people weren't. I mean, the majority of people were like, "Okay, he's just a rapist," yeah, as like the entry point, and nobody looked further into it, and nobody was like looking at nuance or whatnot. So generally, like at the end of the day, I don't know, I don't know enough of the stories, and it's just obviously he says.
But he still has the same influence over there with the whole kind of Me Too aspect where people aren't sure whether they should.
Yeah. In Italy, the Me Too was a little bit different because just generally we're a little bit less worried about that kind of stuff here. The women have more power, sort of here, I think, than in the US. So they feel more empowered about their sexuality and all that, and they feel that it's their decision if they get into a situation like a Weinstein sort of thing, right?
Right. Was there an equivalent? There was no like Weinstein.
Well, Asia Argento, she's Italian, right? She was the one of the first to come out about Weinstein.
Oh, right.
Right, and she
was the first woman that got it, like from a male.
Oh right, and then she got hit as well. She got
hit. Like,
someone hit her. Yeah.
So
it's another first for Italy.
Sticks.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
She was what's the chef that died? Bourdain. She was Bourdain's girlfriend.
Oh, that whole thing.
Yeah, and but before that, she was in movies, and she was Dario Argento's daughter, the horror movie director. So, it's a little bit different. So I don't know if you saw what happened in France, where the women were like, "Fuck it, we don't give a shit about this kind of stuff."
Oh, was that
all the actresses were like, Juliette Binoche and all them. They were like, come on, men have to be men, women have to be women. That's the sort of thing.
You're right. I mean, somewhere in Europe, that viewpoint was going to come out.
One of course.
More sexual countries, but also, like, was there an equivalent figure in French directing that was a Weinstein, or was it such that like the culture kind of prevented such a monster from festering?
Or is it more accepted in the culture simply?
Yeah. Right. I mean, if it's accepted, are people still like suffering and unfairly being like their careers blown to the whims of someone's penis, or
Yeah. Exactly. I mean,
that's at the end of the day, how many amazing actors did we never see in roles just because they didn't want to fuck someone?
I'm sure
to think of the alternate film history that could have been.
Just as many secretaries, I think, that never got that job. I mean, like, I think it happens everywhere. Definitely. I think the big thing is that it got like in big American style, it got it just like picked up, and people are way more activists maybe in the US and in other countries, like in France, maybe they're a little bit more like activist minded rather than Italy. Italy is kind of just like, okay, go with the flow in general. They might have an opinion, and they might have a strong opinion, but I don't think they're going to like really with the respect to compared to the US. I mean, like the US, they like took it and they ran with it and they destroyed like every like
kind they could find. Some say, or just like once. But
that's going to happen.
So overdue for the idea that we took it so far. Whereas I think Italy and France have definitely more a reputation for kind of having a little more sexual empowerment or familiarity or maturity than especially we are.
And that said, I just before somebody listens to me and is like, women in Italy, we have a lot of feminicide in Italy, of like men that come in and kill their wives because they were cheating and that kind of stuff, right? So
the machismo, that culture of pride kind of thing.
There's a lot of that kind of stuff, but that's a different thing. I think that's exactly what you're saying. That's a pride culture, and that's what's the word for it? It's the honor culture.
Right, that's the downside of that highly sexualized, like, same thing, Central South America, that kind of like,
exactly.
I'm a man,
Yeah. So we have that problem, and obviously there is a glass ceiling, I think, in Italy in many jobs we got, but I think that's for everything. That's for everybody. If you're a 40-year-old son of of a rich industrialist, you're never going to run that country, that business. He's never going to retire, because that's the thing in Italy. The people don't retire, they don't go away, they don't leave, right? So you got, like, if you're talking about rich white men, the richest, oldest white men in the world are Italians. They just don't die. And that's why we invented the coronavirus, to try and get rid of them.
It's really weird to kind of have a disaster, but root, like, when it's your only hope of toppling, like, the corrupt powers that be, or changing the game. It's like, okay, sorry if it kills your grandma, but also I wouldn't mind if it affects, like we're seeing now, all the people in the South in America, people in churches, people in southern states having big protest rallies where they're spreading the disease, and then all of a sudden the death rate shoots up a week later. Like, it's horrible, and I don't want anyone to die, but at the same point, if all of Trump's voters are going to prove themselves so stupid that they kill themselves off and can't vote for him, I mean, it's hard not to see some sort of some sick irony in there. Yeah.
At one point, we have to accept it.
Yeah, you can't protest a virus. We don't want you here. It's like, can't build a wall from that.
There is madness. But on the other side, I just had a chat with a friend of mine in New York. She's an actress. She's Indian Muslim and an actress living in Brooklyn. So she was visibly traumatized by what's happening, like, because she like, her community is facing expatriation because Trump wants to lock out all the people of color. She's seeing a lot of people in the inner cities getting sick, and a lot of white people not getting sick. But she, like, visibly, you could see that she looked like somebody who's in a war zone. And I was like,
the class divide.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's showing all the cracks in our system. It's making them bigger. It's widening them. It's exposing all our flaws and all the things we need to change. And that's the whole thing. Is that, like, are we going to change when this is over, or are we going to try? They're going to try and slip us back into the status quo that is not working. Yeah.
Well, people will just slip back into the status quo. That's what people do. They did it after the Second World War. They did it after 9/11. That's what happens, because the status quo, I think, is pretty much, it's there for a reason. I mean, it's not because somebody made it. That's how it is, I think. And then sometimes you can pull it up a little bit. You can raise the tide a little bit, but the status quo sort of stays the same, the hierarchy.
That is usually, I think, the only thing fighting against that, because that's like the natural tendency of history, is the increased anger and just like the accumulation of this rage, paired with the internet and the ability to, although there's so much fake information, it's a lot easier to find the real information and see it all together laid out and be like, okay, shit, like, we need this. This works in this country. That doesn't work in this country. We should try a version of this. The people, even just the fact that we're talking more about healthcare and universal basic income, those were unheard of ideas not too long ago. And now coronavirus, everyone got their stimulus check, or not everyone. People are still waiting for the disastrously low amount that they're giving us. Like, Canada's rocking it. They got like $2,000 a month for people. And there's so many easy ways to do it that we're fucking up. But every time we mess things up, people learn better ways to do it, whether the powers that be use those ways. Now, of course they don't. But just the fact that young people are so energized to see through the bullshit and of what is mostly like the capitalist taint of our systems, like over capitalism, like a greedy, horrible type of capitalism, instead of a more conscious, like worker-centered capitalism. And it's kind of a matter of time before those tides turn. Like, when you look at all the Bernie Sanders support was all younger people, whether they voted or not, or whether the systems were there in place to make them believe their vote counted. That's a different story. But it is kind of a matter of time. And like, it's weird how you say, people call COVID boomer remover, or that kind of a thing.
I don't know. I've always got this feeling that because we got some family that's very evangelical, and they're never going to change their mind. They're in South Africa, and they are Trump supporters. Like,
they're in that team.
Yeah, because that's a team. That's a team that they have to support. And I've got a feeling that those people don't spend time on the internet like you would or I would, looking for information.
It might change your mind.
Yeah,
like,
and they have.
We're not trying to change those people's mind. It's unfortunate. I want to try and change everyone's mind. I'll say that. Yeah. But like, there's a certain amount of the population that it's not worth your time to try and change their mind. And fighting is especially not the way. One thing I appreciated about Bernie Sanders is like, from within the campaign, they tried to emphasize storytelling over just like spitting rhetoric at people and telling them why they're wrong. They're like, just tell your story. Ask them about their story. You'll understand why someone got to their views. And most of the time with this hyper-religious people that support Trump, it literally just has to come down to abortion. And it comes down to a couple of very important religious things, and they can look past everything else because religion is such a mindset that you can like look past the most obvious, disgusting sin. And literally the poster boy of not a religious person is Trump.
Of course.
But religion is the kind of mindset you can be like, it's a test. Aha.
Exactly.
Support this ass. I'm not supporting him. I'm supporting him saving unborn babies.
Yes, yes. I found a Christopher Hitchens quote the other day about abortion, which I never thought about, because I've always assumed atheist who gives a shit about it.
He was against it, right?
Hey, he was against it. I discovered that he was against it because he says.
What did Hitch say?
Yeah, he said that if there's only this life, and this is the only chance that you have to live it, because there's no afterlife and there's nothing else, by aborting, you're taking away the possibility of that person to have the only life that he would have had. So if there's no reincarnation and there's no life after death and nothing else, it's quite a big like takeaway from that. And like I've struggled with this a lot.
That's a strong point.
Because I'm like on the fence. Like I don't see any way to get out of this. Like pro-choice and pro-life is for me.
Oh, there's no real answer to that.
There's no answer to that kind of stuff.
Because like you could say the same thing to the person that's having that baby. You're also depriving, like this. You have to take that into consideration that person's life is being compromised with this new arrival. And then it goes into like when do you become a human being? Like all this gets really complicated.
Unless it's rape, there was a choice made there. But anyway,
right.
Yeah, but
there's always exceptions. It's gray. It's gray at the end of the day. That's what's so wrong about the pro-life, pro-choice debate is that it's
a silly debate to have.
Red or blue.
It needs to be possibility, and everybody should just decide for themselves, and that's it. Because at the end of the day, it's the individual who should reign supreme.
Circumstantial.
Right. Yeah. You either believe in a kind of freedom of your body or you don't. And
yeah. Well, we got into these weeds because I mentioned the tainted one. And
it's all your fault.
Now we're talking about abortion. It's all your fault. We're talking about a clean comedy.
Exactly.
No, women's reproductive rights are interesting. It's a final point. It's like what kind of society do you want to live in? Look at the statistics. Look at what happens, and that's how we make those decisions. I don't know.
Yeah, well, I mean,
what I just saw is one side doesn't want babies to die, and the other side doesn't want to take away your free. Well, they kind of do. But just don't call each other baby killer. No one wants to kill babies.
Exactly.
It's the hardest decision that anyone should have to make.
It's never going to be liked.
Kill babies.
Okay,
don't take my guns.
Amen, brother. Don't take my baby's gun. That's his gun.
Of course, she needs one too, or it needs one. But I had only mentioned him not because I wanted to get into a tirade about whether he was right or wrong.
I'm going to edit the whole thing out.
No. I'm going to leave everything because it's very good. This is why we do this. This is the whole reason that this podcast exists. It's like explore the dark recesses of the world. But I was saying that he opened up a huge market. Basically, all of a sudden, because he sold out 3 shows in Milan and he sold out 2 shows in Rome. So it's 1,000-seater. What was it? 300-seater theater?
350.
350. Yeah. So, that's quite a good number in a city that doesn't speak your language. And we've sort of figured out that with Netflix, people are watching comedy in the original language now.
With subtitles?
Yeah. So
just what did they try dubbing it for a while and it's just weird?
No. They just didn't bother. Before it was, if you wanted to watch comedy, you went on YouTube. That was the only thing that we could do. Right? There was nothing else for us.
And just a fan subtitle, right?
Yeah. So now all of a sudden, people were there and people were laughing like if they were at the Laugh Factory or the Comedy Center. It was just like it was insane.
He traveled back in comedy time about 10 years.
Completely.
Yeah.
And now
must have felt surreal. Yeah.
I mean, he was stoked. I think he was almost in tears at the end because I think it was one of his first shows in Europe. So he was like super stoked by that.
Starved for a kind of human affection.
Yeah.
He's a comic at the end of the day. You know, I'm not going to lie and say I didn't have a picture of him up in my damn wall that was signed. You know, I saw him in little places in Florida before he hit big. I asked him for advice the first time that I was going to do a half-hour long set. And he gave me great advice that was completely true. And you know, so I definitely got to balance that stuff. But at the end of the day, it's like saying, oh, your husband beats you? Well, he's nice to me.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But again, that's a whole other excuse. We're figuring out to separate art from artists right now in this world and where that line is.
I mean,
exactly. That's what I was about to say. Like, so, who knows how many like Motley Crue and Motorhead albums have been recorded on the asses of groupies, you know? I mean,
if we held people in the old days to the standards we do now, we would have very thin catalogs of entertainment.
Yeah, you'd have
like, who knows what Frank Sinatra was doing and all those like old school like the King's Theme.
Yeah. The Beatles, like Hitchcock and stuff. Here he is, you know, and it's like, are we going to, cancel? It's like I was thinking of a Black Mirror kind of prompt where we have the technology to just go back in time and recast people and redo the role.
Right.
So like you never existed, just erase your entire acting history and, like Kevin Spacey. We're not
He's coming back now, right?
I wonder, I haven't heard, it's almost like a Mel Gibson thing. It's like he tried to, but he kind of came back and he got movies, but do you ever really fully come back? That's a question. I don't know. I mean, Aziz Ansari is someone who's 100% worthy to come back. It's like pretty much like he was one of the kind of victims of the overzealousness of the Me Too movement when everyone was just like, who's next? We got to get them all. And I appreciate that, but he was one of him and maybe Al Franken, because he was a comedian when he took that stupid picture, and comedians are stupid.
Trying stuff.
But again, the left in our country holds ourselves to a much different standard than the right. So
I
shouldn't even say ourself. I don't even want to say our. I'm so disgusted with them right now. Freaking mainstream left. But we're all us Bernie people are coping with the fact that they screwed us again.
But was that like also a point of deciding to leave stand up a little bit on the side? Was like the overzealousness of people wanting to protest even jokes? Like, did you ever have to deal with that at your shows?
I've not to an insane degree, but you've had to go with the times. I mean, it's unavoidable. Comedians have had to, and they always have had to change the way that they speak with the times. There's a sensitivity that you need now that if you don't exhibit, you could very likely, cause people to have the wrong reaction. And it can be your fault and it can be their fault for just hearing, I've been in rooms where I just say the word Muslim and some people are like, like, just talking about my Muslim friend here. Like, this, it's not even the part of the story. But just some people, there's a certain, handling that you have to be able to make people feel comfortable a little more these days, and more so in Denver than other places. One of the things moving from Miami comedy to Denver comedy was that I had to reevaluate a lot of the jokes I had that had race in them, because when I did them in Miami, people were a lot more comfortable just mentioning different races and the funny differences and just experiences that you have. Whereas in Denver, all of a sudden it had to be like, oh, you guys don't like when I do the Jamaican accent here? They like it in Miami, but now, okay, I'll just do it in a non-Jamaican accent now, and I guess that'll work better. And that's kind of the general trial and error of comedy. But
that's the funny thing, though, isn't it? Because
we should be more sensitive these days.
Comedy's gone progressively more dangerous through the. It was always like the voice outside of the choir. It's like, and it was Carlin. He was like he wasn't speaking how people would speak back in the day, when he was
dissecting that speech.
Exactly. And that's, I think, the role of comedy, is to be outside it, looking in and sort of pointing at the problem rather than using the notes for the choir,
That's a great type of comedy. That's a classic type of comedy. Yeah. That's a beloved, but it is not the only type. And in this world, it's moved in both directions. Comedy has gotten increasingly dangerous and increasingly safe on the other side, because you have the corporate comedy, you have the mainstream comedy, you have the comedy, for people who don't understand comedy and just shitty sitcoms or, any stuff like that. So there's just so damn much of it that I think you just have to kind of soak in a lot and find out what makes you laugh and what's the truest form. I think the comedy you're mentioning is the comedy that hits so hard with people because it isn't just making you laugh. It is making you think. It's making you realize it's, and whether you know it or not, or you realize it later, or it's just like, I never thought of it like that.
Well, I mean, when you paint, when you're talking about painting, you're talking about Van Gogh. You're not talking about the guy who's painting in his cellar, So for me, like when I hear comedians that hurt me inside, I'm laughing, but I'm like, oh my God, did he just say that? Is that something that fucking hell? Then that makes me feel like more alive, because it's like, oh my God, this is like dangerous. You start, the adrenaline starts pumping a little bit.
You say when you pains you, that's an interesting reaction to comedy, or like it.
Yeah, it can like give you like a physical,
like a realization,
of like, or like just when Trevor Noah speaks about how his mother had to walk across the road from his father when they lived in South Africa, I mean, that's like it feels bad, especially when you've seen that sort of situation, when you grew up in that kind of thing.
So right, you're just talking about like balancing the dramatic elements.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, is building it up is like, I mean, it has to come from some way. But even the punchline can have a dramatic undertone, and like a completely wrong undertone, and it can hit the wrong chord inside of you. But if you're laughing and that wrong chord is hit at the same time, that's a very weird dichotomy that you have inside of you, and it sort of starts you thinking about things, right? And that's the power of the art. I mean, if we're like, if it was safe, then it would just be pop music, Yeah,
but I think that's
it is challenging.
That's exactly what. Yeah. That's exactly what he was saying before as well. What you were saying. I'm looking at like a gallery view, so I'm like, he said that. But you were talking about sensibility, and I've been binging on Community lately.
I just started. Dude, it's one of those ones I haven't gone through, but I respect all the people behind it and everything. It's a great team. Crazy.
And I've been going into like. I never really look at the writers who did it, and then I got into Rick and Morty, and then I found out about Dan Harmon, and it was like, yeah, exactly. I went from the extreme to the more simplistic, which is not simplistic at all, like the writing.
Well, I'd say it was just mainstream, the extreme to the mainstream.
Yeah,
because it was an NBC, 8:00 primetime sitcom.
Crazy, and it's actually crazy how some things actually got into that show at primetime on NBC, which is like. When you think about it, it's pretty dark.
Sneaking
I got into like a kind of YouTube like loophole and like loop, whatever. I just started binging Rabbit Hole. Exactly. Thank you very much. And I was looking at like essays on how sitcoms have changed, and they were talking about this whole sensibility aspect of it, because like. The late 2000s that were always like very sarcastic and very snarky and they were fine. They were like they worked, but they didn't have that element of sensibility. And the moment like shows like Parks and Rec and Community, they named those two shows in particular. They added that element of like, there's some realness to this, and there's some real sensitivity.
Right.
And all like when I saw that, I started seeing all that the comedians that I really respect and I really enjoy watching. They all had that aspect to them, like Patrice O'Neill, had that, and like Bill Burr has that because he's so real and he has that element of sensibility. Yes, it's personal and it's real. It's not fake, and they don't hide it. And I'm just like, it's just interesting to say that.
That's one of the major trends of comedy is where, comedy in its older forms is just kind of bite-sized little magic spells that you can spit out no matter who you are. And it's a funny thing. And we've increasingly become more personal and more character-driven comedy, where the comedy that you make is irrepeatable because it wouldn't make sense coming from anyone else because it's so deeply personal. And I think that's the kind of stuff we're all looking for, especially when the popularity of those shows like Parks and Rec and The Office and Modern Family, all these ensemble shows that have so many characters that they try to flesh out so that no matter who you are, you can lock in with somebody.
There is development. There's plenty.
But yeah, that's where comedy is now. It's very, it's autobiographical, it's personal, and a lot of time it's less funny than ever in a way, in the fact that we're less worried about giving you constant laughs per minute. For a while, the comedy world, and a lot of it still is obsessed with how many laughs per minute you get. But we're finally at a time, especially with just people have more time and they're giving away Netflix specials like free popcorn. And you can spend a little more time characterizing things, trying things out. There's a lot of specials on there that are kind of almost one-person showy. You have things like Nanette and that kind of stuff. It's all good for comedy, At the same point, you still got people trying to do gags, and it does, there's an audience for everything. But the people who really love and appreciate comedy usually have like a certain mindset and school of people who they're appreciating at the moment.
Yeah, guys,
comedy fandom.
We've hit the hour. I think we can call it a night. Daniel, if you have anything, if you want to just plug your various channels.
Sure. I'd love to. I'd love to have you follow the journey of the podcast. It's called Stand Down. You can find it on iTunes and all that, but I'd love to drive you to my YouTube channel first and foremost. That's the thing I'm going for. I'm going for 100 subscribers. We're at 87.
We're going to push you.
We're going to get there. And then I get a custom URL, and it's not like YouTube/XKG blah, 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 florp. I actually can put my name there. Oh, I'm just dreaming of big time success here. So,
right now.
Yeah, just follow that on YouTube. I'm trying to put out something every week or every 2 weeks. And I'm really just going to get loose and explore and be creative. And I'm not going to bother you or beg for your money too much.
Looking forward to it, man.
I'm so like reluctant to put myself upon the world, but I like the things I'm doing, and other people said they like. You got to do what you got to do. I'm finding my way to comedy.
Exactly. You just got to do it. Just fuck it. There's enough bandwidth for everyone.
I'm the best. Check my shit out.
Yeah, that's nice and just to ask.
Yeah.
So, man, thank you very much for giving us a bit of your time. I know you don't have much of it at the moment, but
I have nothing. But I thought we were going to do 5 hours, really. So
unfortunately, I have a 2-year-old, and thank you
for your time. It's great to talk to you.
That's an abortion coming back.
I can leave you with my brother. Exactly.
Jesus, man.
Cool.
So, no, it would be pretty cool to do different episodes about this.
Well, it would be nice. I mean, if you keep,
I'd love to talk to you
again, we can do it again. And if you come to Milan, we'll organize you a stage somewhere and a place to sleep.
By the time I can go to Milan, I might be ready to get back at it.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, you got 88 subscribers now. So that's
yes.
Yes. We're getting
This was already worth every cent.
Sick.
Okay.
Thank you guys. I appreciate it. Great to talk to you.
Cheers.
Stay safe, man.